All right, ladies and gentlemen, this about brings up our conference to a close. But before we do so, I have a couple of important and pleasant duties to attend to. First of all, I would like to thank all the speakers today in all the three panels for their contribution, our moderators, Irving Kotler for his wonderful keynote speech. I also feel duty-bound to thank the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Czech Republic for having supported this conference, and also all our sponsors who are supporting the myriad activities of the Václav Havel Library throughout the year. And the second duty is the closing remarks, and I can't imagine anyone better to deliver them than the co-founder of the Václav Havel Library, a close collaborator of Václav Havel during his presidential days, and maybe most importantly, someone who had supported the human rights agenda over the years in the 1970s and 1980s, not just through his works, but through his deeds by supporting the independent initiatives in a number of the former communist countries, by presiding over the International Helsinki Federation of Human Rights, by coming to this country to witness the trials with the dissidents who were sentenced to jail for having criticized the communist regime, and for many other things, and also for being a dear and close friend, Mr. Karel Schwarzenberg.
Well, to be honest, these activities of mine are such a long time ago that I shouldn't speak anymore about human rights, because the situation has changed. And as I see it, we had some better conditions. In the 80s, let's be honest, human rights were in fashion. Everything, even political ideas, are once in fashion, once out of fashion. And then they were in fashion. Each government, each political party tried to help us, which is the situation has changed in the moment. Now you hear, well, that we have trade partners, we have to care for our export to this country, we have to see the realities in the world and so on, which was then less heard. And therefore I think I'm very thankful that this conference today was, because it reminds us that the fight for human rights never stops, and never loses its importance. And really several things we have heard are really important. Michael Jantowski already mentioned the most important thing, like the main speech of President Kutler, but to hear the face of different people here was fascinating for me. The one thing is interesting for Europeans. In the year 1991, we showed that human rights in our world has passed away. The communist regimes fell, the dictatorships which were in Europe, Spain, Portugal, Greece, and so on, already finished in the 70s. And suddenly, situation changed. And then I can remember in the 80s, Turkey, we were watching from the Helsinki Federation of Human Rights. Of course, we cared about Turkey very much, but we saw a positive development there. The situation slowly but got better. Now, what did we see to our astonishment? Actually, Turkey, lamentably, the situation is much worse than it was 20 years ago. But we see some new tendencies inside the European Union which are limiting human rights. We have spoken about Hungary, or the memoir of Hungary was interesting, and I follow it, what happens there, and it is a rather fast development. I must admit, I'm desperate about the development in Poland too, which I didn't expect to be. And I do, but what is remarkable, that even in some countries which we thought are really old-time and solidly founded democracies, suddenly look, oh, it's an interesting example how to rule. Oh, it's really interesting that they successfully crush the opposition and stay in power. And that, on some neighbors of Hungary, Orban Viktor's example is evidently very tempting. From Vienna to Belgrade, there are pilgrimages to Budapest. How does he make it? Shouldn't we go the same way? And I'm afraid we will see in the next weeks and months the result of these considerations. So the attitude towards democracy, the attitude to the human rights change even in Europe, in midst of Europe. We should be very attentive and grateful. And therefore, maybe in the beginning of the conference, by right, were mentioned people who were heroes, who were killed, or a long time went to jail in defense of human rights. And they are venerable people. But for us, normal people who still are active, diplomats, politicians, journalists, and so on, I would like to stress one important virtue: perseverance. Fight for human rights needs time and perseverance. Don't give up after a few years of disappointment, or even after 10 years of disappointment. You have to keep the fire in working, and this heat all along works. Human rights is not something which comes overnight, but because, as a rule, if there was a revolution, sometimes the danger was that the human rights after the revolution were better off only as a master's followed. So the peaceful changes are very important, and there you need really patience, perseverance. Never give up, but and don't get desperate if you are frustrated for many years. It's something which is difficult, I admit, because some people are married to fight, but not to stand a long siege, which the fight for human rights in law process, with lawyers in fights in the Euro Parliament, national parliaments, discussing with neighbors and so on. So maybe we all should exercise more of this virtue of perseverance. Go on in spite of, evidently, we have now less success. Evidently, there is a progress of authoritarian political parties, of people who do think human rights shouldn't be used for instance, in Czech diplomacy, it is no importance to fight for human rights. We should fight only for economic success in the world. Never mind. Go on and let's try to be persevere. All along, again, the fashion will come back to human rights and we will have more successful. Good luck for that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Karel Schwarzenberg. And I have two last words of thanks to offer. The first goes to our interpreters, who are the invisible heroes of every international conference, and whose human rights, like the right to sleep, the right to rest, and the right to a decent lunch, are always being violated. And second, my thanks go to you, the audience, for spending a day on these issues and the debate about these issues. And I hope that you will consider it a day worth spending. Thank you all very much and have a nice evening.